So my voice is still a little scratchy, but Chapter 5, Don't Miss the Bus. The next few days were difficult for Brian because Tommy had to drop him off early. On the third day, Tommy looked into his rearview mirror, and as he drove away, he saw that Brian was crying, where he had left him at the end of the pasture. He turned back and climbed out of his truck. Putting his arm around the boy, Tommy said, "Come on, buddy. You're old enough to be here a few extra minutes. Besides, it's nice out here in the country." Teary-eyed Brian sniffled and said, "I miss having you here in the mornings. I get scared." He tried to hold back his tears as he hoped his dad would give in and wait with him. "Come on, buddy. You're old enough and brave enough to be here a short time. I trust you, and you know I would stay if I could, but I really need to head into the office. Do it for me and find something to do the few extra minutes you have to wait. Try counting the neighbors' cows or goats." A few minutes later, he could only watch while his little man teared up as the truck pulled onto the main road and headed for Sanatost S. About the time Tommy pulled into the office parking lot, his phone rang. His neighbor's number showed on his caller ID. He answered nervously, expecting to hear that the dogs had gotten out and were playing with the neighbor's goats. "Hello, Miss Vanessa. How are you this morning?" he asked, putting on his happy-to-hear-you voice. "Well, that depends if your little one is supposed to be in school today." "Sure he is. It's Friday, right?" Tommy replied for a moment. He had lost what day it was. Yes, it's Friday," she assured him. "I left him at the front of the property waiting on the bus. Is everything okay?" He responded, reaching for the door. "He's fine physically, but he had some real concerns about waiting for the bus this morning. He come over and asked if he could help me in the garden. I asked about school, and he said he had missed the bus, so he was taking the day off." Tommy went from worried to troubled and to hold back from showing his emotions. He thanked Vanessa for calling and said he'd be right home to get Brian. "There's no need to rush home. I'm good at handling little bus skippers. I can take him up to the school, but do you mind if I offer another suggestion?" "Sure." He felt his blood pressure slowly coming to a simmer. "If you wouldn't mind, I'd love to keep Brian home today and let him spend some time helping me with the garden. I know it's just you and him, and sometimes it's good for little ones to have someone to stay home and play sick with. And it's Friday. He won't be missing very much today. I'll keep him busy till you get home from work. In fact, why don't you plan coming over for dinner tonight with Dawn and me?" Tommy tried to back out, but Vanessa was not having it. She told him she would see him for dinner and thanked him and assured him he would be there by 6 p.m. Tommy knew she was right. Vanessa and Dawn Levi were good neighbors with the two children. Their son was a little older than him, and their daughter was just a bit younger. After a difficult day at work, Tommy started over to the bakery to pick up some dessert for the following dinner. As he headed over to his neighbors, who were good country folk, he realized the dangers of showing up with a store-bought pie, and after some consideration, he redirected his efforts in selecting flowers instead. As soon as he turned off the main road, he saw Brian riding on an old green tractor with Dawn Levi and glowing with happiness. As Tommy got out of his truck, Brian bounced over to him exclaiming, Guess what? "Let me guess, you skipped school today?" With that, Brian's energy level fell like a stone. His eyes began to water. Tommy scolded him for missing the bus and skipping school. Dawn strolled up and came to the rescue of the little rural bender. He thanked Brian for all of his hard work and asked him if he had told his dad what all the excitement was about. Brian looked up at his dad with a flicker of light still burning in his eyes. Suddenly, Tommy realized his son was excited about telling him some exciting news, and he was ruining some big surprise with his scolding. He felt his belly begin to harden. "Hey, little buddy, let's put the school stuff behind us, and you can tell me about the big surprise." Then, like a blooming flower, Brian smiled and said, "We're getting a horse." "What?" Tommy's face was creased with confusion as he turned it on. Brian continued, "Well, what I mean is that Mr. Levi is getting one, and I helped him get ready for it today. We stacked hay, filled the water tanks, and even made sure there was no sharp stuff around the barn. I also found a turtle that I named Dixie, and we turned her loose in Miss Vanessa's corn patch." "Dare I ask how you know it was a her?" Tommy interrupted. "She peed on me when I picked her up, just like Nana's dog does," Brian answered confidently. They all laughed and headed into the house. Over dinner, the topic of the horse came up many times. Don explained it was his daughter's doing, and she would be bringing it by tomorrow. She had rescued the animal from the abandoned farm and placed and her place was too small. Don went on to express how his daughter Maisie had been dragging animals home all her life. Now, years later, she was a veterinarian and still using their home as the Ark. As dinner came to a close, Vanessa appeared from nowhere with a hot homemade cobbler. A beaming Brian explained that he had helped make it, and Vanessa assured him that he was a big help and then asked if he remembered what they had agreed upon earlier. "Yep, and I won't tell," he said with a sneaky grin. As they walked to the truck, Vanessa told Tommy he should come by tomorrow and visit with Maisie. She was going to be around all weekend to keep an eye on the new horse. Plus, she got bored after about the first night of just having her old parents around. Don piped up in the background, "Quit trying to marry off our daughter." Tommy smiled and said, "It's fine, but I have a lot of work to get to, so I better get going." Brian quickly added he'd be over tomorrow and make sure that he brought that the old man would come too. Then he smiled and ran for the truck.